I think what I love about the topic of ego is that it fits into any situation any one of us are in. And because I do know most of you pretty personally, I think that we're going to be able to make the topic very personalized. And then of course, whatever you're comfortable with, but the sharing is where we really learn from each other. And, this is a safe place. I think stories are really helpful for people to relate and go, oh, okay, I felt that way before. And if someone else can get out of that or move forward, maybe I can too. The reason learning ego was so important for me was it helped me release self-judgment. And I have found in my coaching, self-judgment is kind of the biggest sabotager of our lives, of our relationships. What do you guys think about that self-judgment? Where would you put it on the scale, on the spectrum of life destroying?
Yeah, I mean, this is Denise. I definitely do it more than I would like to, and I have been working on, with affirmations, trying not to do that.
I think ego, when we have those negative thoughts, it's easy to get in loops and kind of hard to get out of it without self-awareness. Like even when I was doing dishes like 30 minutes ago, I was like studying like the house system for astrology, and every single flashcard I had, I was like, oh, I don't know it. I suck at this. Like it can nag at you for sure.
So you get the inner critic of, I suck at this.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Troy?
I think I'll just second that. Like, what came to mind for me is it's the beginning of a spiral, or it can be a growing spiral to just make more challenge, gain more momentum if you continue to buy into the negativity.
How's it for you, Troy?
Like negative talk, a lot of negative talk to myself. After my last relationship, I've been having a hard time with just like, where am I at in life right now? Like, is this where I want to be? I'm not happy with where I'm at, and just kind of like judging myself and what I should be doing and what I'm not doing, and just so self-sabotage, I guess.
Isn't that interesting too? So ego is making where you are wrong, Troy.
Yeah.
What if where you're at is where you're at and it's okay? But ego doesn't want that message. Any thoughts from you, Casey?
For me, self-sabotage, negative thoughts are really only a problem in the morning when I'm going through a transition from sleep state to making my list in the morning and what's realistic and what's not. Normally when I get up out of bed and do my first task for my first hour, I'm really in good shape. And self-criticism was a horrible thing for me, but for the last 6 months, 2 years, I'm not sure. It's really not much of a problem for right now. I'm able to shift from self-criticism back into witness. As you're saying, where you are, maybe it's okay. I suppose witness is a form of that, to actually see the turmoil and the competition, but also the challenge and the success without judgment, and be able to see it from the point of view of the witness. And another thing is with some of my reading from empowering myself through masculinity, I have completely purged negative speech from my life. I never speak negatively about myself, and I minimize sarcasm as much as possible. So from a very conscious and deliberate way, I've really gotten rid of negative speech. And if I don't speak negatively about myself to anyone else, it really helps with the editing of the critic and the self-sabotage.
That's incredible. I'm going to add to that. Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Oh, I was just going to say that's incredible. How, I mean, have you always been able to do that, or is that something that you've practiced or accomplished recently?
I want to give Kim an incredible amount of credit. For the 24 years before that, I was in a marriage, and I was very equal with my wife, and I didn't know how to lead and have many things. Meeting Kim really began a transformation of about 2 or 3 years for me to really become the man that I am right now. So no, by no means have I been that way all the time. After my divorce, I took a number of jobs, such as, teaching high school kids, delivering pizzas, and I really ran in the wilderness for about 3 years. And during that time, I was able to focus a lot on these internal matters with Kim's guidance, and also my own independent studies of doing these things. And I must say, the first year of COVID was perfect, because I was such an extrovert. It's like, okay, Kevin, look, you can't go out and see anybody. You can't do those fun things. You're stuck with yourself. Now, what you going to do? And I really used that time to my advantage to clean things up.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
I wanted to add what's interesting about when you said self-judgment comes up for you. You guys, self-judgment comes up for me at night when it's getting close to bedtime. I wake up so happy, but at nighttime, that's kind of when the voices come in for me. Isn't that interesting? Like, it can be even a time of day. I'm guessing maybe there must be some sort of PTSD. I think there is. I think I had a scary moment at night. So what does that show me? That there's something there for me to heal, something there for me to look at. But I like also another, and we might get into this in a moment, but how you said you've purged negative speech. Something that I've been trying is to say, let's say, my wounded ego comes out at night and says, I'm scared. So I like giving credit to the wounded ego, because the wounded ego, as we'll learn in a minute, is not the true me. It's the wounded aspect of me. The true me is truly divine, authentic spirit essence. So making that statement of, because I like getting my feelings out. So saying the wounded ego feels hurt right now. My wounded ego feels disappointed. It helps me get it out. So hopefully that's just a little added nugget of something to ponder as we go. So let's see what happens next. So we've not really defined ego. I was curious if you all have. Why are you smiling, Kevin? Do you like my little guy?
This light bulb is trying to get somebody's attention while he's trying to worry. He's got what? It's just hilarious. I'm sure there's some story in there I haven't revealed yet. I can't wait. Go ahead.
No, I mean, hopefully it conveyed something to you or sparked something. Like, what is ego? Any thoughts? Because for my healing journey as a teacher kind of coach, I literally go through this where I was like, what is ego? And I was open to the divine kind of shedding some light on that for me.
Well, it seems to me that the light bulb is trying to shake this guy out of all this stuckness that he's wasting his time with. And it's cute. Because the light bulb has no expression. It's just, dude, what are you doing here? Let me shine the light, even if it's, the brightness of God's light or the interior brightness. It's like you're wasting all your energy worrying about little goblins.
I love that.
Literally, you could be shining. That's an expression I use for my son all the time. I say, when you're shining, your values are out in play, and you can anticipate what's taking place. It's a feeling that burns from the inside when you're shining, and that's what I like about this bulb.
I like that he's like saying, hey, you could be shining, dude. Get out of your freaking head. Any other thoughts? Or we can move on, but any other thoughts? Okay. So we're going to understand ego so that once you understand ego, I feel like, okay, then we can master ego. If we don't understand ego, kind of hard to master. And I love how, Denise, you said you're doing affirmations, which are awesome. I think you're going to have more tools tonight, more than just affirmations.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the question that I was brought to. Where does ego come from? Is ego a selfish entity we are born with? Joey, you raising 2 young children? Is it?
I feel like almost the opposite. Like, I think a word selfish comes to mind, but I'm not sure, especially if we look at the last picture, that's ego, right? Like, ego, I mean, in some cases it is like I need my needs fulfilled, but ego also, like the negative aspects, the things that I think we'll focus on are more like my feelings about my needs not being fulfilled, my inaction, my inability, what this person's doing right, being in their head versus acting. Like, I feel like we have asked the question recently, when do we lose that? When do we lose the ability to just go up to somebody and say, I want this, right? And just spell it out. So I don't know. It feels like 2 parts of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, there she is. Hello, Denise. Oh,
I think you're on mute.
We can't hear you.
Thank you.
Oh, there you
Sorry. So I have a standing desk. So is the light too bright?
No.
Okay.
Shine your light, right?
Yeah, shine your light. Okay. So, what do you think, Nicholas? Is ego a selfish entity we're born with?
I don't know if it's necessarily selfish, but I think it's more like to keep us alive. I don't think a baby's intentionally being selfish when they're hungry, when they need to go to bed, when they need to have their diapers changed. Like, I don't think they're necessarily selfish, but I think maybe it evolves into selfishness as it gets older, just because like everything changes. So the way I feel like ego also evolves with us too as we grow up, as our needs change. So I feel like the basic foundation of I think ego just keeps us alive, but also kind of holds on to stories. But I don't think it's necessarily selfish from birth. That makes sense.
I like that. Those are really cool things to percolate, which we'll be coming to. Okay. So these are my thoughts. We'll see if they are true or not, or what each of us believe at the end of this. So I actually do believe ego is a force, an inborn aspect of us, nature. But I also believe ego, kind of along with what Nicholas was saying, is a construct with the help of nurture and life experience, the evolving aspect of us. So, whenever we do say ego, though, society in general tends to, we always refer to ego in the negative. Typically, correct? Like society, oh yeah, my ego made me do it or whatever. And that's why I had to think real hard, just be real open to understanding ego. And I knew I was being led down the path to understand ego because I knew it was going to help me in some way. So we'll see where it takes us. So as I was saying, we kind of attribute ego to, the angel or the devil on your shoulder. Which one are you going to listen to? We never really put ego along with the angel side. So any psychologists out there, Freud created ego, id, and superego. And he was very specific about what each of those mean. But for our purposes, we're just going to kind of wrap all that up into ego. If that's okay. Unless anybody else wants to describe the id or superego. No?
No.
Okay, so
Kim, before you move on,
yeah.
there are 3 thoughts about ego that I'd like to share. There's something interesting that you've said about the regressive nature or the history-based nature of ego, and somebody said the ego holds on to stories, and I think that's a very essential element, and that leads me in a few directions. But the first thing to hold on to stories is, if any of you have read Pema Chodron before, she makes it very clear. She says, stop the record, stop the tapes, quit listening to the stories, stay in touch with your feelings, and stay as present as possible. Because I think that ego, as has been mentioned, has a lot to do with holding on to stories. That normally the stories that are the cautionary tales and cause the wounds and the fears that you exhibit today because you think yesterday is going to repeat. Second part then is, it's the fear that past patterns will repeat themselves, and you're focusing a little bit too much on the bad problems of the past. And what's interesting is when you do hold on to stories, when you think that past patterns are going to repeat, you don't leave room for growth and change. You don't believe in yourself, essentially. You don't have confidence. So I don't see, ego has nothing to do with confidence. It doesn't have anything to do really with growth and change, I see. And it perhaps is putting too much emphasis on these stories from the past and the past patterns to repeat. So sure, it'll keep you alive. And it's some fear-based patterns that want to make sure that you stay the same, but we're not really here to just stay the same, perhaps. And it takes a bit of courage to proceed with growth and change. And it seems like that the ego may not be the place where that occurs.
I think that's very valid to think about. Does the ego want to grow? Maybe as we unfold, because we're going to unfold here very quickly into what you're talking about in the holding on to stories. I liked how you said staying the same. You know, Buddha taught every moment is different than the last. It's almost like a truth is that change is a part of life. So interesting to think about, what if ego is scared of change? It's almost like if we come to a place where we discover that ego is afraid of change, that's going to cause lots of problems in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting because everything in nature or everything around us is always constantly changing, but the fundamental parts of us, like ego, is so afraid of that. It's just such a weird dichotomy that it just came to me now. That was just like, oh, like I never thought about that as ego being scared of change. Like it just puts a different twist on my way of I see the world maybe a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. You seem in deep contemplation, Joey.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this sparked for me is it feels like the premise of survival here. Like I would imagine there's something in us programmed to say what's the most efficient way or what's the most stable way. Like once we found a way to survive, basically, like we stick with that. It's the tapes, it's the patterns, and it's more energy. It's inefficient, if you will, to break out of that, to develop new things. But it like that's the light bulb for me, is it's as simple as that. Like and getting beyond what it takes to survive and going to thriving, like whatever label you want to call it. But the ego is like against that, like an active battle instead of like even neutral.
I love that perspective. I just love all of our perspectives. It's really fun. I'm super enjoying the sharing. I thought.
Joey, thank you for bringing up thrive as a counterpoint to survival. I heard what you said there. The idea then that thrive is something that the ego would actually act against. That that helps a lot. It helps us to understand how the ego can be good for survival and be mindful of the past, but also prevent us thriving. And I'd rather live a life of thriving than a life of surviving.
Oh my gosh, almost like, yeah, you can just try to play it safe, play it small so that you stay in, as Joey said, that survival mode. But like you said, then will the thriving be there? Probably not. It reminds me of, I did a video this morning, expansion or contraction. I guess it's contracting rather than let's go with the flow of change and expansion. Very fun. What do we have next? Okay. Okay, here we go. So I just want to review a little bit of how I think the survival aspect, the force of nature. And the way that I was shown this was, why does a newborn baby cry when they're hungry? We kind of take for granted that a baby cries when it's hungry. Like, oh yeah, they just cry when they're hungry. Well, why? Who told the baby that that's how you get fed? Why does a baby cry when they're in pain? Who told the baby, when you're in pain, cry? Someone will attend to your needs. Or that's what you do. This is how I came to the idea of ego being a force within for survival, or at least how God showed it to me. You guys with me?
Yes.
Okay. So how I sort of process this is, at least let's look at the infant stage, newborn baby. The ego is so vital in survival. This force that tells the baby, alerts the baby, hey, something's wrong here. I need something. Alerting the system, I need something to survive. And needing food and relieving pain are definitely important for survival. I mean, I think of when Riley was a baby, if he wouldn't have let me know he was hungry, I suppose I would have just fed him, obviously. But it would be hard to gauge, like, when should I feed him? When should I stop? I could easily overfeed or underfeed. But this survival mechanism helped both of us. So this is where I shifted in my thought to where it's like, wow, I'm grateful for ego to help me survive, to help me nourish my newborn baby or whatever. So then my thoughts were, well, what if ego is an aspect built into humanity and our evolution so that we survive, so that we run from the lion too? And what would happen if our system didn't alert us to eat or to recognize danger or to relieve pain? So now all of a sudden, what if we saw ego as like this amazing asset for survival? Any thoughts, or should I keep going?
Well, I agree. I mean, so as a baby, that's their only way of communicating is to cry, and that's the only way they're hungry, they're in pain, their stomach's hurting, and so that's the emotion they let out, and that's how they communicate. And then when you're older, you experience trauma or things happen to you, and to protect yourself, you use those experiences, and that's where the ego comes in and reminds you of those experiences to keep you safe from being hurt again.
Supposedly, right? Supposedly
right.
Keep you safe.
Yeah. That's what it's trying to do. in the meantime, it's holding you back from living life or taking chances, or, because you're just always being reminded of the past and what might hurt you or what has hurt you. And that makes sense.
Yeah. So here's a thought that came to mind, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but oh well, it's okay. So Troy, what if when ego's like, hey, that really hurt, don't do that again, or whatever ego's telling you, what if you stopped and said to ego, thank you, I appreciate your concern because I know you want us to survive, but we can move forward. I believe in me. I'm strong enough. See, to me, instead of, darn that ego, I wish he'd shut up. Do you see the shift? Thank you, ego. I see you. I see you're really concerned about our survival. But I got this. What do you guys think?
Bravo!
I agree. I think that makes a big difference. And Kim, I had shared with you that I had taken that class on the meditation, that really, and it really was all, how I looked at it is that, ego is there to protect. But at least my ego is really bossy and thinks it knows best and doesn't want to, like someone said earlier, doesn't want to change and doesn't want to listen. And so I've tried to become more friends and say, hey, just take a break, and like you said, be kinder to it. And it has seemed to help.
Yeah. What if you thanked her?
Right.
I think also what I went through my practice is when there's something that's so painful or that's like it's almost like ego is this child inside of me, and when it's been abused and hurt for so long, and then we continue to be like, oh, ego's this, ego's that, oh, you have such a big ego, and like we continue to like hurt ego, it's almost like it further adds judgment, it furthers the cycle, it doesn't serve us. So I think having this way of seeing gratitude and shifting to gratitude, or just shifting to more kindness or softness, can even maybe let ego loose a little bit.
I think that's an incredible point. Thank you. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank ya.
Yeah.
Muchas gracias.
And we can move on. I just wanted to say, I think it's so funny how cut and dried it is when we frame it for a baby, right? It's physical needs. It's, I need to eat. But then there's like this gap in maturity, what you guys are describing, right? Like, who teaches you to be kind to your ego? Nobody. And I think that's the difference here, is like, it's this scale of maturity that I think that's why we're all here, right? But it becomes more messy. It becomes a lot more difficult when it turns to emotional, when it turns to mental things versus like physical safety. Maybe it's the ego wasn't designed for both, but we're stuck with it our whole life. That never struck me until today. But hearing what you guys are saying, it makes a lot of sense. Like, how would you talk to a child, for example, not harshly, not like you said, oh, just shut up. You'd be kind.
Shut up, I don't need you right now. I mean, it's like,
yeah.
I
go in the closet.
Yeah, like Nicholas said, okay, ego sitting here go, dang, that hurt. All right, I'm going to dig my heels in even more.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could for a moment, there are 4 things that were said here that are just completely resounding with me from my breakthrough from the 3rd of July, 2019, that I'll never forget. There was this line that Kim said, of course she said, thank you, I appreciate your concern, my ego. And then she goes in to say, I believe in me. That is such a fount of power. And she has found a special way to address the ego and then raise herself to that level. Now, let me see if I can recall your name. Nicholas said some things later on. One of my favorite sentences, it does not serve us, or it no longer serves us. I love that so much. Then you continue on to two of my favorite words, which are gratitude, and I pray for gratitude at mealtime with all of my family and friends. We always pray a gratitude prayer, and kindness. And I must say that when I was younger, people said, "Oh, you're so intelligent," and now they tell me, "Kevin, you're so kind," and I'm very thankful for that transition. I think all of these elements, I believe in me. It doesn't serve us. Having gratitude and having kindness are all wonderful ways to respond to ego swelling too much. And I do believe, Joey, the one that tells us about kindness is very much Kim. So I'm very thankful for her.
My higher self receives that. Okay. That was a great recap, and it's just fun to hear how it's touching your heart and resounding for you. So I just kind of sum it up, I guess. I believe our ego exists to ensure we survive. And then I make this distinction that the ego lives in the mind and tells us we need to survive. Because, if we think about, or I don't even, probably shouldn't use the word think about. When we ponder, I guess that's thinking. Okay. When we consider, that's thinking too. When we consider ego, don't we just immediately go to thoughts, the voice in the head? And that's where I felt like God was showing me ego lives in the mind, not in your heart, if we were to make that sort of distinction. And I think the reason why the distinction is important is because the ego voice is not your spirit voice. Correct.
Agreed.
Kim, I like your use of the word ponder, because it not only means you're thinking, but it means you're thinking something heavy that's holding you down and back. So I think ponder is great, and the ego does exist in the mind and not in the body. So thank you for ponder.
Yeah. So ego wants to live, not die. And I kind of, this is the way you guys might have better words, so tell me, but I basically wrote ego is the caretaker of the body. So ego ensures survival of the body. Because, yeah, we need the body here on this earth plane. Spirit needs a place to inhabit. Thoughts, anyone?
Oh, I just wanted to say it was weird, just because ego's in the head, ego's in the mind, but wants to protect our body, but never goes into the body. So I just thought that was a weird thought I had.
And Nicholas, I was with you on that. That's exactly what I was trying to put together.
I'm not quite following. Please share more.
So the ego's up here, but wants to protect down here.
Ah.
That makes sense. I just thought it was weird.
Me too.
That ego doesn't ever want to go into the body.
Interesting.
But it's there to protect.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I think this mind-body distinction is very, very important, and I don't defend this idea. I'm just using my words as I say, but the way that Nicholas says the ego's in the mind and the mind wants to protect the body, it's interesting the way Nicholas said that, because it's like the mind wants to do something for the body, but it's sort of beyond its jurisdiction at that point. Now, the point being that this ego is the thing that sort of develops, and it has a place, and it's thinking, and it's in a certain sense either overthinking or holding us back. So I guess I just want to focus on the idea of the ego being in the mind and wants to protect the body, but maybe that's such a great idea. I haven't thought that through, but I think that was an interesting reflection on what Nicholas had to say.
Yeah, that was a new one. That was cool. I like pondering that.
Well, maybe the mind isn't always separate to the body, because I guess the mind in a way has to keep telling us to survive. So it's like maybe it's almost like the messages are starting from the head and just being like, you go there, you do that, you do this, you do that. It's almost like the mind is just giving instructions, but living a separate life in a way.
Maybe we might create our own ideology around this. But I mean, some different podcasts I'm listening to have been emphasizing how the brain instructs every single aspect of the body. The brain is the grand central station telling everything what to do. Everything. So that is, yeah. Okay. So I think this kind of goes along with, so in fact, ego completely identifies with the body. I guess in this part you'd say ego has accepted its role as this guardian of the body in the mind, trying to direct, influence, etc. But I like that word identifies, because then this is where we can go with, the immaturity of this ego. That's why I feel like it's like this entity that is so confined, like it can't see outside the body. Because how many people have addictions? How many have trouble saying no to something that needs balance, or, I know for me, say no to chocolate or whatever. It's like ego wants more. If it can have more pleasure, for some reason, ego's like, all right, yeah, let's have some. That felt good. I guess what happened for me as I really contemplated the areas in my own life where I struggle, I realized, okay, ego takes survival and goes well beyond that to like pleasure then. Pleasure and wanting more and more pleasure.
I think that's interesting just because that brings me, like, identifies with the body almost feels like what I saw an image of was like animals, like how animals are almost, they don't really have like this, from my interpretation of animals, but animals don't necessarily have our way of thinking and communicating necessarily, so they kind of just go off of their instincts. They want to keep, like, I see seagulls in Wisconsin or Milwaukee, and like they're like hunting for food. They want this, they want that, they want this, they want more. They just like, they're hungry, they're surviving. So it's almost like they just want to keep their body alive to survive. So that's all they see, that's all they think, that's all they know. So it's not necessarily like they're going beyond that. If that makes sense.
Maybe animals don't have egos. That would be interesting. Or their ego helps them survive, or it's that instinct. But how many obese animals do we know of? Unless it's a dog where we're like feeding them. I've never met an obese kangaroo.
That's true.
Kim, there are three things that what you said about ego and identifying with the body. Three things. I won't talk them to death, but the first one is, if we're going to call the ego a force of some type, it truly seems to be something that restores us to stability. The ego wants to restore us to stability. And secondly, on an extreme, the ego very much would like us to go to a cocoon and be someplace that, again, is full of stability. And there's another thing I'd like to throw out there from people that I've known, we've all known. There's an interesting, perhaps, relationship between ego and body image as well. The three ideas I had then were ego is something to restore us. Ego is a place that drives us to cocoon. And ego perhaps has some influence on body image, especially body image, well, whether problems or pride, whatever those cases may be.
Well, I would say to that ego's version of stability.
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
Tell me more.
Well, I feel like that's going to belong on a shelf right here, and we keep going.
Okay.
Unless anybody else has something to say.
This is Denise, and I'm just struggling. I mean, is it really ego, or is it another part of us that does the indulging and the, over satisfying? And I mean, that's where I'm just struggling with, because I do believe that ego is there to, they think the ego is right, and they're to protect us. So how does it go into then? I mean, it just seems like that's the opposite then, if it's constantly wanting to overindulge in things.
Are you willing yeah. Can we hold on to that question?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But that's where I'm struggling. Yes, absolutely.
Let's rally back to it and see if more comes about. So I'm going to attribute this to ego for now. We'll play with this. If unchecked, ego doesn't have restraint. Ego lacks self-control. So in my framework, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in learning this, I realized there's this higher self, as Kevin was saying earlier, that can witness all of this. And higher self has self-control, but ego doesn't. So ego lacks self-control. If you feed ego something tasty, they're going to say, that ice cream was good, let's eat the whole bucket. Or, that was fun. That casual sex was fun. Let's do that a bunch more times. Or you're having a moment in your marriage of boredom or something, and instead of working on your marriage, you go outside your marriage, whatever it may be. So the way I was framing this was, ego is so confined to the body that ego doesn't even know you have a spirit, heart, or consciousness. And I could keep going.
Doesn't have a consciousness?
Yeah, I don't believe ego does.
That's a very strong, illuminating statement.
Ego doesn't know you have a consciousness. Ego doesn't even know you have a spirit.
Yes.
So I guess again, let's play with these ideas. And as we're playing with them, let's look at this. How does your ego want more? Let's just kind of ponder that for a moment. How is your ego not satisfied? I'll just share a few. I didn't typically have this issue earlier in my life until recently, but so I've been looking at that, or allowing myself to see it when it comes. But I'll eat when I'm not hungry. I'll eat literally when I'm bored. I don't need it, but my ego says that would taste good right now. That would satiate some of your boredom. It's not that I'm bored a lot, but I guess it's just like the taste of something.
I can relate to that. I also kind of have like I don't know if it's called an addiction, but like maybe an oral fixation. Like especially if I'm watching a show, or if I'm like just in a class and I just want to, munch and stuff, like I feel like I can keep going and going and going. And I think chips are a big issue, or were a big issue. I don't eat that anymore. Like I kind of switched it around with maybe healthier things like figs or dates. Like stuff like that. I don't know, food has been a way for me to cope for a long time, and I think I've also realized that recently too.
I do want to say here, just to intervene, because Nicholas is a highly sensitive person, as am I. There is something to that, the high sensitivity and needing to chew. Kevin, I know you're as sensitive. Joey too. Do you need to chew? Do you guys need to chew?
No.
Like, I'm a gum chewer, and I just worked with children the other day at Head Start. Of 19 children, there was 2 that were orally fixated. And this is ranging from 3 to 5. 2 of the 19. So, like, that kind of makes sense. If those 2 were sensitive, they were constantly, you know, and they're kind of beyond that age where you necessarily, you know, because there was kids who didn't do it at all, and then there was the few that were orally fixated. And I'm more hyper aware of that just because I'm a sensitive. And so I chew gum a lot. I don't know if you chew gum, Nicholas.
I don't like it.
You don't like it? I love it. It's like, I feel like it's we're releasing energy when we do it. The chewing, there's something about releasing energy in that.
I just don't like it when it gets flavorless. I'm like, what am I doing?
You stick in a new piece? I go through a lot of gum. I'm not even kidding.
Chain chewing.
I mean, Joey's daughter, she's highly sensitive. She needs to chew, right? Does she still have the chew necklace?
She's finally kind of transitioned away from it, but every once in a while, I think when she's nervous, when she's not thinking about it. Yeah.
Can I get one?
I want one. Maybe that'll save me some gum money.
Go to the baby section, the teething aisle.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of an aside, because to me that's not ego, that's something about being sensitive, a little bit of that. And maybe that's what's going on too. My need to chew, I'm taking food. I probably could find another way to release energy. That's at least what my higher self is telling me right now.
Mm-hmm.
How is your ego not satisfied? Anyone? I know my ego can play the compare game pretty darn good. Oh, look at that person over there. Look what they have. Look what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that. Like, especially people that are in like the more self-help realm. Like, I want to get into that, but I'm like not even close to that. So I'm like, what am I thinking? Like, I'm comparing myself to that realm.
Mm-hmm.
I think as things have slowed down for work for me, I've definitely had a lot more of those self-conversations of like, okay, what's the next thing? Like, what are you accomplishing? Because you're not accomplishing X, Y, Z, right? I find that really interesting. And I'm trying to just sit with it and explore it because it's like the first time in, I don't know, 20 years that I haven't had a thing. But, you know, I didn't really think about it as ego until this conversation.
The beautiful thing that I see, though, is your higher self. You've practiced enough, and that's what happens when we practice enough. Your higher self becomes this witness where you're kind of noticing, I'm not accomplishing. Maybe I can be okay with that. Because I do think I'm getting ahead of myself again, but I do think there comes a point then where the ego starts to collaborate with you. but I am ahead of myself. We haven't reached that point, but maybe that's what's happening for you, Joey.
I have a question.
Yeah.
But you don't have to answer if it's not correct. But kind of relating to what Joey was saying about not having the space to relax or just always finding the next new thing to work on. Like that's so the masculine aspect. I'm wondering if there's like this both masculine and feminine aspects of ego.
That's an excellent question. Or statement. There's something that I learned while I was writing a book under Kim, actually, where I think she asked us to personify some of our greatest fears. And there's two characters that I came up with. A little bit of a trigger warning. I'm going to be using a bad word. You'll figure it out in a moment. That's not a very bad word. But the point is that I came up with these two things that were standing in my way. And one was the bulldog. The bulldog told me, you can't do anything. And that really is the voice of my father, the bulldog. You can't do anything. This opposition to being able to achieve, which is part of a source of ego or self-deprecating thoughts and talk. And on the other side, there was another dog, which was begun with a B in name. And the B would say, you can't be anything, and hit me straight at my identity. In that sense, the shallowness, and you're not this and you're not that. So in a certain sense, I sort of divided, I suppose, perhaps my ego in you can't do anything, which is a very masculine thing that we talk about achievement and needing to have directions and make progress and deal with failure and rejection. So on one side is you can't do anything, which is that frustration, that ego and self-sabotage. And on the other side, on the B-dog side, is you can't be anything, which hits you perhaps even harder and says that your identity is of no value or very low. And that comes up with all of the issues of I'm not pretty, or I'm not smart, or I can't ride a bike better than they can, and all of those types of things. So, Nicholas, I just wanted to address the two sides of it. The I can't achieve, to me, appears very masculine, and perhaps I can't be presents itself as being very feminine.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because remember in my teachings with attraction, at least when I'm referring to heterosexual relationships, what I found is men need their women to be, and that's what they're attracted to, their being, but women sustain their attraction to men by them doing their do. And that's interesting that in your two personalities, we'll call them personalities of your ego, one was the masculine do and one was the feminine be. That's interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so Joey knows, because I've gone through this with Joey. Joey and I have done internal family systems. So Joey and I both have gone through different characters. We call them our internal family, which would be the different ego personalities. Because it is helpful to kind of be like, okay, I've got a worrier over here and I got a rager over here. But what did you name yours again, Joey? You had really cool names, like your overall description.
Yeah, like one of them I remember that I really wanted to address was the angry one. Or like, I think one of them was the doer. It was definitely just centered around action words.
But you had another description of them. Do you remember? It was different, like guardian or
Oh yeah.
You had such a cool description.
Guardians. Yeah, I think it was definitely on the theme of like that protection, like your ego's trying to keep you alive, you know.
That could be something we ponder until next week. By the way, y'all tell me how late you do want to go. Do you want to go till 8:15, 8:30? What are you comfortable with?
As you're taking a break, I really do need to leave in just a moment.
Okay.
And perhaps I should. Everyone, it's really been a pleasure to speak and work with you. And Kim, as always, you're such a blessing. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your session. I'm going to have to go out.
Okay.
Good to meet you. It was nice meeting you.
All right. All the best.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
What do you want to close up like around 8:15 then? Would that be a good time?
Yeah, I think so. This is Denise.
I'm so free-spirited. I should have thought of this ahead of time. Not should have. I didn't. I forgive myself. But yeah, I'm having so much fun that I forget to time things. Okay, so that might be kind of fun to ponder until next week, the different ego personalities. And again, I haven't forgotten what we've got on the shelf there. The 2 questions. It was, what's your question? What are you pondering again? I wrote it in my notes. Denise?
And the last part that you did, so my ponder was, if ego is to help us survive, why is it the ego that's making us overeat or that the pleasure piece of it? But after I had asked that question, you went on to the next one. Part of what you were saying, it did help me because it lacks self-control. So, so I get that piece of it. But, for me personally, I am just going to give that a little bit of more thought.
Yeah.
Just for me.
And let us know what you come up with. That'd be fun.
Okay.
So I guess something helped. So again, this is just like how the spirit is interpreting the information to me so that I understand, this huge difference between these voices in your head that just completely derail you and this higher self aspect of me. And so this is how like the divine unfolded it to me, but also reminded me of, I don't know if you read the Bible or any verses from the Bible, but the Bible talks about the fruit of the Spirit. So when you're living by the Spirit, this is what it'll look like. It's going to look like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. And I found that so fascinating because what what Spirit was showing me is that ego is everything that the Spirit is not. Because like ego is kind of this neutral entity that just is, right? It's instinctual, so it's not good or bad or whatever. But with the nurturance, which again, I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. I think we're getting to it. Yeah, we're getting to it. So yeah, we'll keep some of this on the shelf because we're going to get to it. Yeah, there we go. But that was really powerful for me to recognize that my true self, my higher self, my spirit essence does have self-control. So what's helped me is to realize like I don't have to listen to ego. I can listen to my higher self, which has self-control. And just knowing, just that mere fact of knowing this is truly who I am, like I can be in my self-control. I can be in my love. I can be in my joy. I can be in all of those things, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, towards this immature ego that wants to survive but just gets so misguided. Anybody have thoughts on that or?
So who misguides it? I mean, I'm just thinking, why some people have their egos more in check than others. And so, and again, feel free to table this because this may just be way off.
I think it'd be great for you to ponder. It is a few slides down the road.
Okay.
I mean, I unfold my version of it, but I think it'll be really interesting to see what comes up for you as you ponder it.
Okay.
So, okay, this feels like a pretty good place to kind of Well, yeah, it feels like a pretty good place to end. That way Kevin won't miss out on too much. Does anybody have any final things to share or any thoughts? Was it helpful tonight? Was it kind of interesting? Some things.
It was interesting.
Yes.
And always, it's nice to hear from you, Kim, but it was great hearing from other people as well, different thoughts and things on it too, because it's all, it was very helpful.
Awesome. I thought so too. I learned quite a bit tonight. So that was really fun. So I'm just planning on continuing to do this on Tuesday nights. Tuesday's group coaching. If you have friends or anybody you know that could jump in, that'd be great. All right, guys. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you all next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you,
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good
Bye.
night.